Updates. That's all we really need right now from the Carolina Hurricanes, as they are still off for a couple more days, but we did get some at practice on Tuesday. What's going on with the injuries? What did the lines look like? We'll talk about all that here on a Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes.
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network. I'm your host, Zach Martin. I'm the credentialed Carolina Hurricanes beat writer over at the Hockey Hours, also the co-host of the Search Cast, which is a weekly Carolina Hurricanes podcast, along with all my duties here at Locked On Hurricanes. On the Wednesday edition of the show, we're going to be doing some injury updates to see where Jaccob Slavin, Jesperi Kotkaniemi, and Pyotr Kochetkov are at, and we also get to hear from Jordan Staal post-practice. Then we're going to talk about the practice lines and see what even the power play groupings look like as well. Then finally, we're going to listen to Rod Brind'Amour post-practice and give my thoughts on all of that. But before we jump into that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. Now, the Carolina Hurricanes did have practice on Tuesday, late Tuesday morning going into the afternoon. And, it's the second day of 3 days in a row off. The Hurricanes don't play again until Thursday against Toronto. Of course, schedule making is very interesting. The fact that you had you played Sunday, every other game up until then 3 days off, then it's 3 games in 4 days or 4 and 6 of how you really want to look at it. It's a lot of hockey. But the Hurricanes did take to the ice. And the big question mark right now is, Jaccob Slavin. He was with the team before practice a little bit, still in his no contact jersey. Is he going to be back anytime soon? Well, according to Rod Brind'Amour, which we'll actually hear him talk about a little bit more in segment 3, said he isn't too close to returning yet. All we know is his lower body. We know it's his knee. Other than that, we still don't know what exactly that is. And that's the kind of thing for me where it's like, it's tough to be like, okay, what exactly is wrong with his knee? Was there a surgery? Is there some, slight, is it healing they just need to work with? Maybe is it, what's going on with it? We don't really know. And that's the thing, because it's really tight-lipped. You don't know exactly what's going on lower body, even though he wore a knee brace, but what kind of knee injury is the problem and what's the timeline? And the Hurricanes have said they never want to give timelines on that because you don't want to expect it. But at the same time, it's you're getting closer to almost 30 games now rather than like 20. Like you're already at 23, going to kind of come up on 24 games without Slavin. Every game that passes by, okay, when's he going to come back? When's he going to come back? And that's kind of the big question because you want to see him back, hopefully for the Hurricanes soon and get the opportunity to play for USA at the Olympics. And right now, we're in December. Still no idea what's going on. He's been out since October 11th after the Flyers game. So hopefully we get to know more soon. Eventually, I guess. We'll see. Jesperi Kotkaniemi lower body is getting close. He was out of his no contact jersey. It sounds like he was back in a regular jersey with the Hurricanes. We'll see how close he's going to be back, and we'll see what is close or is getting close is. And then for Pyotr Kochetkov, also lower body. Quick quote from Rod. Like I said, I'll talk more in segment 3 about it. It's kind of up to him and how he feels. Hopefully he'll be in the mix here soon. Hopefully we'll see how soon for Pyotr Kochetkov before he's out a second time this season already. But Brandon Buss has been playing really well. And take with a grain of salt at practice, Brandon Bussey was named the first of the 3 goalies in the starters crease, but never really take that with a grain of salt or take it with like, oh, he's going to be the starter on a non-game day. Things could definitely change between now and then. Now, if it's game day practice, that's a different story. But Bussey was named first, Anderson second, and Kochetkov third. But that's kind of where we're at right now in terms of injury stuff. Slavin isn't too close to returning yet. Jesperi Kotkaniemi is close. Pyotr Kochetkov, how's he feeling? We'll see from there. But after practice, we did get an update on Jordan Staal, why he was out for the 3 games that he was. So let's jump in and react to that right now.
How are you feeling, by the way? Had that illness
still honestly a little rundown with but better obviously. Yeah, got some energy back, and it was a pretty rough week. It was an interesting one, but happy to find it.
Based on what we saw, it seems like a lot of that is about possession off of the draw.
Face-offs will be important always. You always want to win, and I mean, the longer you have the puck in zone, moving it around, the better chance obviously of scoring and doing breakouts. So I'm going to do what I can on the face-off and try to get us to start with the puck and hope we can make something happen after that.
You have a lot of practice, obviously, taking face-offs. What goes into being so consistently successful in face-offs throughout your career?
I mean, obviously, I have some size as well. That's good to my advantage. I think try to get over the circle as much as I can and really just use my strength when I need to. But obviously, some nights it doesn't work, and you got to mess around a little bit. But for the most part, I just consistently been using my strengths in the draw, and that's just my body and getting over the circle as much as I can.
Nice to look around on the ice today and see pretty much everybody back.
Yeah, Slavo was nice to see Slavo out there, and yeah, everyone, KK, and it's been. Been a little up and down with injuries this year. It's been frustrating, but Slavo's obviously been out for a while. Seems smiling the whole time. It was great to see him, and I'm excited to see him compete again.
How much is it just a little bit of a morale boost to see Slavin out?
Yeah, of course. I mean, he's one of the best defensemen in the league, so it's always nice to see him on the ice with the guys. So it's a big moment for him, I'm sure, and for the group. We're excited to see him be under the lights with the fans.
Pretty impressive. We're kind of a third of the way through the season. If you had to give this team, a report card grade, what would you give it?
Yeah, I think
25 games or so?
I think we've been good. I think there's obviously been a few hiccup games, but I think you can tell our identity's there and what we want to do and what we've done in the past that looks very similar. And we obviously can continue on the details and get better and stronger and create more and more. But I think it's been a good strong base.
Big thank you to Jordan Staal and the Carolina Hurricanes, as always. And hear from the captain, who wasn't really a great week from him, and Corey Laviolette did update later on social media that he battled meningitis, and that is very unfortunate why you saw the captain out for 3 games this an entire week. That is a rough thing to deal with, but it's good to see him back and, already making an impact on the faceoff dot, and that's what you really need, especially for the Hurricanes are known for their faceoffs. And talk about having Jaccob Slavin back, even in a limited role or capacity in practice, but it's definitely a morale boost seeing the best defensive defenseman in the NHL back on the ice. You wish you had him in actual games, but it's good to see him mingling with the guys and, going through some of the drills and stuff like that. Now it's just kind of, hopefully you get him back soon, but definitely morale boost there. And then talk about the first 25 games of the season. He goes, yeah, the team is playing well. There are some few hiccup games, but they're getting the job done. That's all you can really ask for. And for me, I would say that's so far 25 games in, I would give it a B+ season for the Hurricanes. Yeah, there's some games where you wish you had a little bit extra. There are some games where you wish you didn't have so many turnovers that led to scoring chances. If Kochetkov was, in a little bit more, it'd be great to have him back. Nothing you can do about injuries, but he's played well. Brandon Bussy's played really well. Unfortunately, Freddie hasn't played the greatest, but you would definitely give this first 25 games a B+, especially for the Hurricanes, even after all the injuries they've been dealing with. But it's good to hear from the captain. Good that he's feeling better. Good to see you're seeing KK back on the ice. Jesperi Kotkaniemi, Slavin's somewhat back, at least practicing for the most part. We're still not sure when officially back on the ice for games, but you do get the sense there's a little bit, the mood and the vibes are picking up a little bit for the Hurricanes during these 3 days off without games. But we're seeing the Hurricanes trend in the right direction. That's all you can really ask for out of this team that's still, chugging along, top of the Metro, top in the Eastern Conference and top 5 in the NHL. That's all you can really ask for out of a group that's dealing with injuries and sicknesses and all that other stuff. So we'll see how everything else goes from there. So we did hear about the injuries. We did listen to Jordan Staal after practice, but what did the practice lines and the power play groups look like? Stick around. We'll go over and discuss and react here in a second on a Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. When I'm hydrated, everything just works better. My focus, energy, mood, even my skin. That's why I've been using Drip Drop. It's doctor-developed hydration that keeps me running at full power no matter what my day looks like. Drip Drop isn't your average sports drink. It delivers 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of leading brands using a science-backed formula trusted by medical professionals, firefighters, or even over 90% of top collagen proteins. And there's also a sugar-free version, which I really like. It's still, you're getting the electrolytes, but you're not really getting any of the sugar. And also, too, it actually tastes amazing. My go-to flavor is the watermelon, but I do like the passion fruit, lemon, lime, peach, all of that good stuff. The fruit flavors are amazing, and it's become my secret weapon for staying sharp and energized through long days. Hydration has become a non-negotiable for me. Drip Drop helps me feel sharper, calmer, and honestly, just better overall. Right now, Drip Drop is offering podcast listeners 20% off your first order. Go to dripdrop.com and use promo code LOCKDOWNAHL. That's dripdrop.com, promo code LOCKDOWNAHL for 20% off. Stock up now before the heat hits hard, or if you're starting to feel cold outside as well and need that little extra energy, well, that's what Drip Drop can do for you. And it keeps your body and mind performing at their best with Drip Drop. Welcome back to segment 2 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. All right, so we did the injury updates, listened to Jordan Staal post-practice, but in terms of actual practice itself, what did the practice lines and the power play groupings look like? Well, we know that Jesperi Kotkaniemi graduated from his no-contact jersey, but he was on the fourth line kind of rotating in with Eric Robinson. But overall, Svechnikov, Aho, Jarvis, Ehlers, Staal, Blake, Carrier, Staal, Martinuk, and then, like I said, Hall, Jankowski with Robinson and Kotkaniemi playing as the rotating in fourth right winger and just being with that group overall. Defensively, Kendra Miller with Sean Walker, Shane Gostisbehere with Jalen Chatfield, Alexander Nikishin with Joel Nystrom, then Slavin being with Mike Riley, and then, of course, the goaltenders, Brandon Bussey, Frederick Anderson, and Pyotr Kochetkov. So a little bit of a difference on the defensive side, but not a whole lot. Basically the same groups for the most part. You got Miller and Walker playing together, who've been really good. Ghost, Chatty, that's a great, offensively minded pairing, but also some good speed there as well. And of course, the two rookies, Nikishin and Nystrom, who've actually been playing really, really well together. I kind of like that secret, sneaky third pair where it's young guys, but they're doing a really good job of shutting things down on that third defensive pairing. Forward groups, nothing's really changed other than Kotkaniemi's kind of been rotating in with that fourth line. The top 9, as we all know, stays the same. It's been the same. It's actually been really working for the Hurricanes over the last few games. You have some games where the top line is scoring, but maybe or they don't score. Maybe it's the second line kind of picking up picking up a little bit, or it's the third. But relatively, the top 9 basically stays the same. The only thing that's different with the last pair, line, is that KK's coming in. Other than that, the forward lines are basically the same. They beat the Jets. They just beat the Flames. And they got Toronto on Thursday. They're going to, knowing Rod Brind'Amour and what he's done, if these lines are working, he's not really going to change it. And then if something does change in the next game and if there's a line, if he has to jumble the lines up and they win, they might stick with it a little bit, then eventually go back. But as of right now, it's the same groupings that we've seen a lot of, over the last few games. Defensively, it's just changes because of guys getting hurt, coming back in, coming out, and stuff like that. But relatively, the group that gets maybe jumbled the least is the defense, except this year it's been a little bit extra crazy in terms of all the injuries. Now, looking at the power play groups, you've got Sebastian Aho and Seth Jarvis with Jordan Staal, Andrei Svechnikov, and Shane Gostisbehere. Then you had Blake Ehlers and Hall on that second pairing with Stankoven and Alexander Nikishin. However, take that Jordan Staal viewing as a demo run, as Rod Brind'Amour puts it, that we were just messing with something with a specific play. So don't expect the captain to be a full-blown power play guy for the Carolina Hurricanes. He's hardly ever used, honestly, rarely ever used in the power play. So don't take that power play grouping as, this is going to be a new thing they're going to look at. Now, you could look at Jordan Staal as a guy winning, if you want to put him in the offensive zone to win faceoffs, or in the defensive zone, he's someone that can help you get some possession, which the Hurricanes have kind of somewhat struggled on the offensive side of things to get the puck to keep it in the zone. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's a thing where if it's on the offensive side of things that maybe Jordan Staal might draw in just to get you possession on a faceoff. But most likely, I wouldn't be surprised if Ehlers goes back to power play one for the most part. Stankoven slides back into the center role. Then it's probably like a Miller with Nikishin as your second power play defensive pair. Because you don't see a lot of teams have two defensemen on the power play units, but if it is, it's mainly PP2. So I could definitely see if this not set play with Jordan Staal being on the first power play group, Ehlers will fly back up there, no pun intended. And then Stankoven goes back to center, and then you're going to see Miller drop back in. But obviously, Gostisbehere, he's the power play one quarterback. We all talked about during the 3 stars of November episode from Tuesday. That's kind of what you're looking at. So power play groupings, that's kind of what you're looking at. It's not something that's a little, different or too crazy. It's just looking at one set play for Jordan Staal, and depending on a face-off situation or where the Hurricanes are at. Other than that, nothing's really going to change on the power play side of things. And like I said, for the 4 lines of defensive pairings, everything's pretty much copacetic there. Nothing's going to change. It's going to be the same groupings for the most part. Wins or losses, and if it's if they're not clicking in a game and they jumble the lines up and they win or something happens, they might keep them for like a game or two, and then eventually we'll see them go back to their normal pairings. Because we've been seeing it, all season that, you thought you were going to have Nikolai Ehlers as your first line left winger. He was kind of doing all right for the most part, but then all of a sudden you put him on that second line with Stankoven and Blake, and it's kind of worked out for those guys as your second line. And then Andrei Svechnikov kind of gotten unlocked a little bit, being back with Aho and then being with, Seth Jarvis. That's really helped as well. And of course, it's good to have, William Carey with that third, that third line of Staal and Martin, because it just makes sense. We saw last year how good it was, outside of, Carey being hurt. It played really well together, and luckily they've been together for the most part this season. Fourth line, to have an MVP player like Hall on your fourth line shows you how good your depth is as a team, where you don't have to force that guy into your top 6. You can throw him up there if you need to, but for the most part, you have a former MVP in your fourth line. That's some great depth options for the Hurricanes. Mark Jankowski's been playing really well since Kotkaniemi's been out. Eric Robinson brings some, extra speed, and just his size and his physicality and what he's done. It's been a massive boost. So you got a line with some good playmaking, big bodies, guys who's got some speed, guys who do have scoring touch. All 3 of those guys can score. We saw it last year for the Hurricanes in different aspects or different facets of, certain games, that it just really worked for the Carolina Hurricanes. So that's kind of what you're looking at for a really, sneaky fourth line that a lot of teams would love to have. Like those 3 could be of Hall, Jankowski, Robinson. They could be a third line on a lot of teams, but just because Carolina is so deep in their depth, that's your fourth line. In defense pairings, we know same groupings for the most part, but they've done really well together. It's good to see, Miller Walker have kind of settled into a good pace together, as, with more offensive side to Miller with the good sneaky 2-way of Walker, and what Walker's done so far this year defensively and racking up the minutes. Ghost Chatfield, you got some speed, you got some, high offensive upside. Of course, the defense has been working really well. And they've both been playing some great defense, and Gostisbehere's defense has gotten better since being under Tim Gleason. And of course, you got that rookie defensive pairing of Nikisha and Nystrom, who've been sneaky good, and I like how those guys have been working really well together. So we'll see how that works out. In terms of goaltending, like I said, you don't really want to read too much into that, just because it's an off day practice. Whoever's in the start crease that day might not be different by the time you get to game day, and we still have Wednesday to get through as well. But I mean, the way Brandon Buss has been playing, he's got his first career shutout against the Flames. He's won 5 straight games in a row. He's 7-1-0 with all these days off. Wouldn't be upset if you do go to Brandon Bussey, but knowing the Hurricanes, they don't want Freddie sitting around for too long, because by Thursday you're talking a week in between starts, because Brandon Bussey started last Friday against the Jets and Sunday against the Flames. So Freddie hasn't played in a week, so they might go with him. Only time will tell. Of course, that's our Thursday preview episode of Locked On Hurricanes when we do that. All that to be said, what did Rod Brind'Amour say post-practice? We'll stick around and we'll listen and react to that here in a second on a Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets on as action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is the best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, the defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up. You can bet next touchdown scorers, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Welcome back to segment 3 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. So we talked about the injury updates, heard from Jordan Staal post-practice, talked about the practice lines, power play groupings, and all that stuff. But what did Rod Brind'Amour say post-practice? Well, we'll listen to that and react to it right after, right now.
Got some faces back on the ice that you have to be pretty encouraged about having pretty much your full group out there.
Yeah, I don't think Staal was too close yet, but I think it's great to see him, as I think it's his first practice with us. So, it'd be nice to get him in a real jersey and real thinking he was close, but I think at least steps in the right direction.
And KK too, getting out of the yellow.
Yeah. So that's getting to where we're getting closer, that's for sure.
You think Coach could be potentially getting back towards the rotation then?
Yeah, I think he's, it's kind of up to him how he feels. So we'll get a better update tomorrow, but hopefully he'll be in the mix here this soon.
Looks like you had Jordo working on the top power play unit. I mean, are you just looking for that face-off draws because it feels like it's been
no, we were just messing with some with specific, like a play or something in the game, but we're just messing around a little bit.
Just to have Slavin back, just how much is that a morale boost, just to see him out there skating with the boys?
Well, I think that's the key is for him, number one, to get in the mix again, and he's been out of it, for a couple months. So, and then for our group too, to nice for them to see that we got a guy coming here hopefully soon. So, but it's more everything we're doing now is to ramp him up, and obviously we miss him.
We talked plenty about Brandon and what he's done since he's come here. Do you think it helps that he's not a 22-year-old? He's a guy who's seen a little bit and maybe isn't overwhelmed by the moment or why?
Well, I think it helps anybody when you've been through it, and he's been through, especially goalie, like that, that ups and downs of that position and in an organization where you're, maybe the third guy, and it's just knowing that you got to be ready for whenever that start comes through and take advantage of it, and clearly he's done that.
You talked about when you're playing against another goalie, you don't worry about it. You're shooting the same. Is it a little different when the guy's left-handed?
Not really.
No?
Not really. I mean, I don't know. Can't really speak for everybody, but that's his, catching hand. But if there's a hole, wherever the holes are, you're going to shoot it. And it matters really only on forechecking the goalies and things where where they're going to go with the puck a little more. But other than that, there's really, not much difference.
So that's an adjustment for your guys, is getting used to the way he has.
Well, that and the opposite if you're playing a goalie, where you just have to have that awareness.
Big thank you to Rod Brind'Amour and the Carolina Hurricanes as always. And you heard it from the coach. You would love to have Jaccob Slavin back on the actual ice instead of just in practices. Unfortunately, still a way away. KK will hopefully be close. Same thing for Pyotr Kochetkov. And, even asked him about, Jordan Staal, and he's like, just trying something out. Not that big of a deal. So that's kind of what you're looking at right now with the Hurricanes. And, and totally agree with Rod's assessment of just like, it's cool that you're seeing guys back on the ice, but not really in the capacity that you want, especially when you really want Jaccob Slavin back on the actual ice because he's the best defensive defenseman in the NHL, and he's been sidelined since October 11th, and now you're almost 2 months without him. Essentially, we're like 8 days away from 2 months without Jaccob Slavin, and you really wanted to have him on the ice, and that's just the unfortunate part. Well, you don't have a guy like that, on your blue line, but everyone's been kind of stepping up, and then, you look at, hopefully KK's back soon. Same thing with Pyotr Kochetkov, but Brand Busty's been holding down the fort, 211 goals against, 907 save percentage. That's all you can ask for of a guy who was claimed off of waivers, has been playing really well, despite the fact that Freddie's been kind of, been a little bit inconsistent, but, can't place full blame on. You guys heard me talk about that, the last week or so. But this is a Hurricanes team right now that are still getting the job done, despite the fact that still don't have a full roster. You're still dealing with a lot of guys who are in a situation where you didn't think you would have to need them at this point of the season. Like, who would have thought you had Charles Alexis Legault, who played really well, but now he's out still for a couple more months. You don't have Jaccob Slavin. Mike Riley's playing a good number of games, and he was supposed to be your seventh defenseman, and he's kind of slipped back into the seventh defenseman role just because Joel Nyström has been playing very, very well for the Carolina Hurricanes. Like, they could send him down or place him as a seventh defenseman, but he's played well enough to where it's like, now we're going to keep giving him games, and that's kind of where you're at right now, that you've had to dig deep into your depth, and thankfully the Hurricanes have worked it out. Special teams, it's kind of down compared to other years, but, you're without the captain for a few games. You're still without your best, like I said, you're still out without Slavin at that point as well. And, goaltending is, kind of a little bit inconsistent, only a slight bit, not bad when, two of the other goalies have a combined 11 wins already out of the 25 games. So it's just a situation the Carolina Hurricanes are in right now where you're dealing with the injuries. You're missing guys you really want to have back in your lineup. It's, an okay, B-plus start to the season. You're in a good spot. You're at a point where you're kind of figuring it out in that time frame and just kind of going on from there and seeing where you're at. So it's just, keep chugging along, see what happens, post 25 games into the season. And now you're just, what happens after that? It's kind of the big question of, can you keep the pace up? Can you keep this playing up? And that's kind of all you can really ask for when you're talking about an 82 game season. Well, there's so many games, but that's kind of where you're at right now. Like I said, you're still, top of the Metro, top of the Eastern Conference, fifth in the NHL in points. You're getting it done with the group that you have, and hopefully sooner rather than later, you kind of get everyone back. And then, all right, the Hurricanes are a full squad. Let's see what they can actually do with their full roster that you kind of expected right from the rip. And then, of course, now it comes to making decisions on, who's on the defense. When you get Slavin back, who's staying? Because that's the big question, because I don't think you're going to carry 8 defensemen. So it's like, all right, who's the extra that's going to Chicago? How are you going to figure that out? And then, once you get Pyotr Kochetkov back, that's another roster spot you got to figure out. So there's just a lot of things the Hurricanes got to figure out, but that's obviously right now a future problem. But right now the Hurricanes are in a good spot. Now you're just kind of hoping to bring everyone back and seeing how it goes from there. But I know it's not a lot of, good updates. It's kind of like, we'll wait and see what happens. But, it's just we're another day closer to having games back. It's been a long, 3 days, and we're just on day 3 of this as it's Wednesday. Still waiting for another game, but luckily we are not that far away from another Carolina Hurricanes game day. But until then, guys, this will be the Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Thank you for making your first listen of the day. For your second, check out the Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. If you want to keep up with me, I'm at OneCheer Zach on X. The podcast is L_Hurricanes. I'm also on Blue Sky, the Zachary Martin. Wherever you click the link tree in my bios, you can find all of my written content at thehockeywriters.com. I'm putting out a lot of stuff recently. If you want to check out my other podcasts, it's the Search Cast on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. For Locked On Hurricanes, we're on Spotify, Google, Apple, iHeartRadio, wherever you listen to your podcast. Make sure to leave a 5-star rating and review because I might just read it on the show. For YouTube, it's Locked On Hurricanes. Subscribe. Hit the bell notification so you don't miss the show. Hit the thumbs up to let me know if you like the show as well. Share with other Kingx to become everydayers just like you. But hope everyone enjoyed the Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Enjoy Wednesday. And until next time, as always, let's go Canes.